Good evening, and welcome to GV Wire's Candidate Forum for the Fresno High Area 5 Trustee seat on the Fresno Unified School Board. My name is Nancy Price. I'm the Education Reporter with GV Wire, and I'll be moderating the forum. The 4 candidates were all invited and all initially agreed to participate in the forum, although only 3 are here with us tonight. They are Russ Allen, retired teacher, Andrew Fabella, a retired firefighter, and Daniel Renteria, a retired parole administrator. The 4th candidate is Andy Levine, a teacher and community organizer. Let's get started. Thank you, candidates, for joining us tonight, and for everyone who is watching us on Facebook Live or on the replay. So a little bit about this special election. The winner will take the Area 5 seat that was held by longtime trustee Carol Mills, but she passed away last July after a battle with Lou Gehrig's disease. The winner will serve the remainder of Ms. Mills' term through November 2024. Ballots are being mailed out to voters starting on March 14th, which is a little under 2 weeks from tonight. And I'm hoping that in tonight's candidate forum that we'll have some lively conversations with our candidates. Some of my questions will be general and will apply to all of the candidates, and I'll ask them of the 3 candidates, and some will be specific to each candidate. So before we proceed, a note of disclosure. GV Wire publisher Darius Assemi is publisher and CEO of Granville Homes, which has made contributions to Daniel Renteria's campaign. The topics and questions I'll be raising tonight, however, are mine. So first off, candidates, can you please briefly introduce yourselves?
Hi, I am Russ Allen, and a little bit technologically challenged, but I hope to survive the Zoom interview tonight.
And Andrew Fabella, could you go next?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Fabella, and I'm running for the Area 5 trustee seat. And I hope to be able to instruct or instruct, but give information to all of you. Thank you.
And Daniel?
Hi, my name is Daniel Renteria. I am running for the Fresno High District trustee position. And I want to thank you, GVY, for allowing me an opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's start out with our first question. And that is, I know you're all walking in the Area 5 area, speaking with voters, talking about the issues that are on their minds. What are they telling you are their top issues? And if you're elected to the school board, how would you address those issues? Let's start with Andrew Fabella, please.
Well, many of the issues are, one, they asked me about their Iroquois Indian. Why was it taken from them? Why did the community have was given no ability to speak on it? I tell them that it was a terrible time to do it, seeing that it was a pandemic time, and the school board did not allow people to speak at board meetings. So it was just 3 people from Arizona who had no part of the Fresno community. So they also asked me about their classrooms and are things as bad as they are academically. I show them a printout of the iReady test scores for each school that are in the area. Now, those schools in the Area 5 range from 6.5 to 14% in terms of preparedness for the upcoming school year. So I tell them there's a lot to do, a lot of work. There is corruption in the school district with the administrators who have stolen property from the district, and the superintendent refusing, as well as the board, to have those people prosecuted and return our district money to us so that they can be used on our students. So those are some of the things that I told them I'm going to try and work on to improve.
How would you address the issues that you just raised, the school mascot, student performance, and theft or misfeasance by school employees?
Well, in terms of the mascot, I would like to again have a an open forum for the district or for the Area 5 Fresno High area. Allow all stakeholders, alumni, students and parents living in the area and attending Fresno High to take part in it. And that can be as well as business owners that live in the area as well. They should all have the ability to speak on the what they feel about the Iroquois mascot and whether or not it should be replaced. I think they should definitely have the right to, if they believe it should be replaced, to pick their own mascot rather than have the district pick it for them. In terms of the malfeasance, well, that's simply following the law. The board is required by law to report malfeasance should it occur. And the fact that they are not doing it is in fact themselves committing felonies themselves. So you're talking about a board that is being corrupt, and then they are actually, you have board members backing some of these candidates, and I'm thinking that's pretty scary to me. And the people who I've been talking to find that quite alarming as well. And in terms of the poor academics, I'm getting a group of retired teachers and retired administrators together, and I plan to do an evaluation or an audit, you might say, of the schools in Area 5 to assess their abilities as principals and as teachers to actually teach in the class, so that the school district can repair that part of it. And then once we can repair those ends of it, then I can go out into the areas and bring parents back into the schools where they belong and help in their child's education.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Daniel, same question to you. What are the voters in Area 5 telling you are their top issues? And if you're elected, how would you address them?
Okay, thank you. I do knock on doors every day, and I talk to residents, families, and those living in the Fresno High area. And they're very keenly aware that students are struggling. And they're fully aware that students were struggling before the pandemic. You know, the Fresno Unified School District is the third largest district in California. We should be leading in education, but we're not. We function below the state level. So I think the parents are really concerned about getting their students back on track. And I understand that we have to assist parents, teachers, and students to navigate themselves through the pandemic and get back on track with their the academics. Second of all, what's really come to light lately is the behavior of the boardroom. At the very beginning of our campaign, we've talked about the distractions and the politics in the school and the boardroom. That's one thing we need to remove. We need to remove that behavior. Does no good. It's not helping students to achieve and come forward with their improvement. With my background and my experience, I think I can be the voice of reason and find common ground and bring the board members together to do the job that the voters expect them to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And Russ, the same question. What are the issues that voters are telling you about, and how would you address them if you were elected?
Well, as Andrew pointed out, there are many people very upset about how quickly they just ramrodded that big F for Fresno High to remove the Iroquois warrior without involving the community whatsoever. It was done in almost just, let's get this done real quick before anybody notices. Almost criminal the way they've tried to get over on the community, it would seem. And if indeed it is criminal, as Jim Tuck and some of the people assess that it is, there is a lawsuit pending. It's going to take time, but I truly believe that the people that ramrodded this through should be financially held accountable. They say, where are we going to get that $500,000 that we spent? Well, did they really have the right to spend it if they didn't have appropriate actions followed? That's a big question that's bothering a lot of people. Then there was the group of parents on the corner of, I want to say, is it Thorne or Ferris? There were Daily School. There was a group of angry parents all holding signs for the actions that they're seeing in the requiring of masks and the 6-foot distancing out on the playground. And it almost, one of them had, our children are students, not inmates, as if they're being treated like prisoners and forced to wear these masks. And some of these mandates, they want to tout the science, but they're only allowing the science that they want to respect. They're not looking at the full scientific community and all of the people questioning. And there's over 50 studies out saying that masks cause more problems than they solve. And so, yes, Clovis is taking a step in the right direction by making it optional for the students, for the families, for the teachers. I believe that they should have the freedom to choose for themselves. And if it's just too terrifying for you to go to school where there are the chance of disease, then at that point, we do need to consider homeschooling. But the socialization that we have robbed children of, not being able to see each other smile, not being able to see how their kindergarten or first grade teacher forms words for phonics, putting their mouth in the precise position you have to get those sounds. These years, right now we have 12th graders that haven't been in a normal school setting since 9th grade. We have kindergarten, first and second graders who have never been in a normal classroom situation. The number one most important thing for their psychological development is the socialization skills developed there. And when you can't even see if someone's smiling when they say it, it almost seems like an attack on our children. I hate to say. But it does bother me quite a bit. Now, there are also a lot of problems in academics, but you know, I keep hearing about people just seeing the failures, and it just kind of disheartens me, having been a math teacher, and I know what our kids are up against, and I know how many kids I got that were completely enumerate when I got them. That's the math equivalent of illiterate. And we would jump them years, but was it enough to say they were at grade level? No. Was it enough that maybe they could balance a checkbook and survive in life? I hope so. But yes, at DeWolf High School, continuation, alt ed in general, we are dealing with the kids that were underserved, and there are too many of them. And that is a constant.
Thank you, Russ. And just as an aside, the mask issue is actually kind of moot at this point because of the decision to make mask use a choice starting in mid-March. So I know that's been a hot button issue for a lot of parents, but that's kind of off the table now. Let's move on to the next question. And Daniel, I'm going to ask you to lead off with this one. Is there anything unique about the Fresno High area that makes it different from other trustee areas? And what are your qualifications to represent the area?
Good question. I've lived in the Fresno High area for almost 60 years. I've gone to the feeder schools, Hamilton Junior High School, graduated from Fresno High School. My son attended Fresno High School, and my grandson currently attends Fresno High School in the special education program. It's such a unique area. It's a beautiful school. It's been renovated a few years ago if you've drawn by there. Very historical, dating back to 1989, very historical, going back to, and just, I think it was 1989, they had the 100th year centennial. Such a rich history. And, you know, I love my community. I love my high school, and I really want to work to continue the work that Carol Mills did. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, could you answer that question? What's unique about the Fresno High area, and what are your qualifications to represent it? You're on mute.
Yeah. I think the Fresno High area is quite a diverse area, probably the most diverse area in the city of Fresno. But with it comes with various problems. You have much gang problems, a lot of safety issues are going on. There are issues in terms of the lack of bilingual students or bilingual teachers that is inhibiting towards those students who only speak one language other than English. The gang, I mean, I've tried to help in terms of bringing great facilities to the district. I work with Carol Mills in terms of bringing the brand new CTE buildings to Fresno High, as well as to the Duncan High School CTE buildings there as well. The new elementary school, or the new buildings, classrooms at Slater Elementary were a part of what I fought for Measure X. So I'm trying to help in bringing better conditions in terms of how your kids go to school. They don't have to be in swelter or in any kind of degraded, dilapidated classrooms. We have the money to fix those classrooms. And then I want to give the teachers the resources they need to be able to reach out and engage the students. I don't believe we're helping teachers enough. I don't believe we're giving teachers enough of a free hand to be able to teach their children in a way that they think is best, and because they know their students.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you because I think you're verging a little bit from my question, which is what makes Fresno High a unique area, and we may touch on some of these other things.
Oh,
later.
okay.
Sorry for the interruption. So Russ, same question for you. What's unique about the Fresno High area, and what are your qualifications to serve as its trustee?
Well, Fresno High area is one of the most historical neighborhoods in Fresno, other than the downtown itself. It extends from the Tower District all the way to Highway City. And so one thing that is really unique is the district has put a lot of the sections that house our city's homeless. And Fresno High gets more homeless students probably than its fair share. And it is a real issue. When students don't have homes, where are they supposed to do homework and things of this nature? So there are very special concerns in the Fresno High neighborhood, and reasons why, beyond the student control and beyond the parent control, of why there are struggling students there. And so, yes, there are supports that need to be put in place for these students that find themselves beyond any fault of their own in these circumstances. And so we do have some students there that are very affluent, and we have some that are absolutely some of the poorest kids in Fresno, and bridging that gap between the two.
Russ, let me interrupt you right now. What would you say your qualifications are to serve this unique district with what you've just mentioned?
Well, I live in the Fresno High district. I have since I was 8.5 years old. I went to Fremont, Hamilton, and Fresno High. I graduated from Fresno High class of 75, my brother class of 72, and the older brother's 69. My daughter graduated there in 99. I have two sons that graduated, I want to say 2001 and 2007. They serve at the 144th, and they have given me a pulse on what kind of kids they have dealt with in these schools, and what kind of problems occur there with regularity. And so I currently have a 6th grade grandson going to Bullard Talent, who I suspect will be at Fresno High in a few years. But Fresno High is near and dear to my heart because I've lived here. I've worked with the poorest kids in the district at Wolf, kids whose parents chose drugs over them. I know what the situations are. And I do know that there are a lot of very positive resources willing to go to bat to try and combat these problems. Sometimes they get told that, oh, your services aren't needed, thank you.
Okay,
And
Russ.
I don't understand why, but.
All right, thank you, Russ. Let's move on to the next question. And Russ, I'm actually going to start out with you on this one, that the issue of having police on campus to provide security is still before the school board. The trustees did not renew the middle school community resource officer contracts, but did renew the contracts for school resource officers at the high schools. Now the school board is apparently reconsidering that decision about the middle schools, although the police department, Fresno Police Department, is so short on manpower that they wouldn't be able to provide officers again for at least a couple of years.
That's a shame.
What is your position on having police at school as school resources officers at middle schools and at high schools?
I know many teachers that I worked with who felt safer because the policeman was there. But more importantly, was the relationship that was quite often built between an officer and students that are sitting at that crossroads of life, trying to make a decision of what they want to be when they grow up. And having this positive role model there, I have seen taking a kid from that kind of cocky class clown to, I want to be like that guy. And there was a video, Superintendent Rob Nelson played for the staff at the end of, I want to say, the 2020 school year or the 2019 school year. I forget which one, but he played an officer was being moved from the school. And the number of kids that were just, you know, had to have hugs goodbye and were in tearful, we're sorry, we're losing you. And how many signs of how they loved him and respected him, how their lives had improved because of he was there. You have to see this stuff happen to know it exists.
So it sounds like you're saying that you're in favor of police.
Oh, very much,
okay.
Very much. Our police in those positions have moved a few mountains, in my humble opinion.
All right, thanks, Russ. Andrew, same question for you. Should the school district renew its contracts to provide middle school community resource, neighborhood resource officers, as well as continue to have school resource officers on the high school campuses? You're on mute.
Most definitely they should renew the contract. June 4th, you had a man with a gun jump the fence at Cooper Middle School. The school had to go into lockdown, but you know, there was no police officer on the campus. I think the staff and the children would have been felt much safer if they had a police officer on that campus. Who knows what might have happened, you know, had he not gotten out of the school grounds. On June 28th, you had a gang shooting in the Slater area, and during the chase, the vehicle lost control and it slammed into the front gate of Slater Elementary. So you know, you need that kind of, it's a terrible area. Well, it's very gang oriented area, a lot of high gangs. When the district made Cooper a baccalaureate middle school, and they sent those who were not going to be going into Fort Miller. Well, you're talking about a territorial group of people who were with Cooper, and Fort Miller also territorial. When they moved Cooper into Fort Miller, it was like throwing gas on fire. And all of a sudden, the principal there had, after about a month, she had a nervous breakdown because of all the rioting that was going on, all the fighting that was going on. But yet there was no officer on that campus that could have helped keep the peace at best. So it is definitely a requirement to have the police officers on the middle schools.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Daniel, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. I have a grandson that attends Fresno High, and it's extremely important for me to know that when he goes to school, that he's safe, and that we create a safe campus. I do support campus resource officers. And when I do talk to neighbors, they're very much concerned about their students. So, and I support that. Very quick answer, yes. But I will say that I do believe the officers need to create positive relationships, and I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. My next question is, how would you evaluate Superintendent Bob Nelson? What kind of a job do you think he's doing? And if elected, would you want to change anything? And Andrew, I'm going to start with you.
I don't believe that Bob Nelson has been a very good leader. He's a very nice person, but he hasn't done the things necessary to initiate change, initiate improvement in our academics. As I mentioned earlier, we have corruption now within the administrators there on Fresno Unified. Well, that doesn't, corruption doesn't happen because of good leadership. It happened because of the lack of leadership. When I ask administrators there at our meetings, have these programs, were they on there last year? Were they there the year before, the year before? And when they say yes, I often ask them, well, then why are we renewing these programs? I ask them often, I ask Mr. Nelson sometimes, what are you doing to encourage teachers or to allow teachers to teach, to be more independent? And he doesn't say much. He doesn't say anything at all. He allows his lower administrators to do that. And so he doesn't have much of an idea as to what is actually going on the district. And so, but he makes great commercials. And but I don't think he's a very good leader and a very good superintendent.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Daniel, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. This is a very difficult question because much of the problems that we have today is systematic. And it's like a huge ship that we need to turn, and it will not turn quickly and very easily, but we need to move in that right direction. I do believe we need to set goals for the district, set goals for Mr. Nelson, and evaluate those goals intermittently and throughout the year to see whether we're meeting those goals and evaluate them, and then base our judgment based on the fact whether he's meeting those, whether the district is meeting those goals. I think it's important to take a look at the entire school district, not only just the Fresno High District, and find out what we can do to improve, and set some meetings together with the board members, and that we come up with an evaluation tool, how we judge and how we evaluate Mr. Nelson. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And Russ, same question to you.
Well, once again, you'd had to been there. Having worked for a bully boss, AKA Mr. Hansen, teachers had been very disparaged. Did you know there's a teacher shortage? And part of the reason is because of all the ails of society have been blamed on teachers. And then you have bully boss superintendents like Mr. Hansen was, that came in and treated their principals like a rat dangling over a gator mouth and saying, I'll drop you if you don't do this and this, and get your teachers to do this and this. And he just created such a bad atmosphere that Mr. Rob Nelson inherited. And inheriting such a mess, it was difficult for him to proceed forward. And he knew that there's a balancing act between, a few bad teachers. Here's one of the hardest things about being a teacher. You find out there's a pedophile in your district. Now, every one of you are suspect. And you can't escape that. And that's part of every day that you just don't allow yourself to be caught in a room alone with a kid, because in your word against theirs, you lose, Mr. Teacher, Mrs. Teacher.
Let's still focus, let's focus on your evaluation of Superintendent Nelson.
Mr. Nelson has inherited a hotbed mess. And I think he's done an amazing job of morale improvement amongst his teachers. Because bottom line is this: if Mr. Nelson and all of the ivory tower people don't show up, does education continue? Yes, if the teachers are still in their classroom. Turn that around. If all the teachers stay home and all those people show up at the ivory tower, does education still continue? I'm afraid not, because they have no teachers. And so the bottom line is, everyone who isn't a teacher is in form a teacher's aide. Are they living up to that? Well, under the little time I worked under Rob Nelson, I felt much more supported than I had in the previous years under Hanson, or even worse, Santiago Wood. Thank you.
Andrew, did you have something to respond to on that?
Yes, I would have to say, while my daughter was attending school, you would think that the superintendent would be having oversight over the entire school district, would ensure that qualified teachers are in their classrooms. My daughter attended Bullard, and she at times had no teacher in the classroom, none, where you would have a revolving door of counselors or a teacher that had an open period that would come in, but it wasn't the teacher that was supposed to teach that class. She'd had this happen to her not only her freshman year in math, but her sophomore year in geometry. This has happened at Fresno High as well. My brother taught 30 years there, and I used to help him in his science lab, and I used to see, children, DACA kids getting chased by, and it embarrasses me, but chased by Mexican American students and having the crap beaten out of them, because of the fact that the security people, not the resource officer, but the security people are nowhere to be found. And these things that our superintendent should be addressing, when his lower administrators are not. And when parents come to board meetings and they say these things and he keeps his microphone off, or when parents come to a board meeting and they want to speak to their trustee, but the president of the trustee won't let them, that superintendent should be turning on his microphone and saying, hey, they came down here, you should let them speak. So he's not doing a great job. He's just doing a job well enough. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So my next questions are the ones that are sort of specific to each of you as a candidate. And Andrew, I'm going to start with you. In the candidate profile in GV Wire, you said that you were a smoke jumper, but members of the smoke jumper community say that's not true. And given this question about your record, should voters consider you to be trustworthy or to have credibility?
I've never worked with Jason Ramos, but I hear he has a book out, so I'm sure he might be trying to plug it somewhere. Chuck Shelley says his database is only 99.9% accurate. Well, come back when you got it 100%, okay? Because if he's getting it from a database that is government run, that should be 100% accurate. And who knows about Mr. McMillan? I don't know. I've never worked with them. I don't know who they are. But all I'm worried about right now is trying to fix Fresno Unified School District and get our children the best. And they can trust me on that by how I fixed Slater Elementary back in 2004 to 2006, how I made Malik Elementary a better performing school back in 2008 to 2009, and how I've been going to over 267 board meetings and working for their rights. In fact, trusting them to have a special election by being the only candidate at the August 3rd board meeting and fighting for their right to vote. Okay, so do you want to trust somebody? That's a person you can trust who's fighting for your right and for your kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, this next question is for Daniel. So you haven't been as politically active or as engaged with the school district like several of the other candidates. Why are you now interested in seeking political office? And why do you think you would be an effective school board member?
Okay, thank you for the question. I've been involved in the community for well over 40 years in a variety of organizations, nonprofits, dating back to the 80s, working with the Boys Club and working with the Police Activities League as on the board member and a volunteer. I can name numerous other organizations working as a board member of the Fresno County EOC. So I have been engaged in my community for over 40 years. And I love my community. I support my community. I'm still involved as a volunteer. Up to about 2 years ago, I was the director of the Tower District Marketing Committee. I currently serve on the Tower District Design and Review Committee and also on the District 1 Police Advisory Council. So I've always had my hands in the community. I love education and what education has done for me. I graduated from Fresno High, went on to graduate from Fresno City College, Fresno State College, and went to work for the state of California for 25 years and had a really successful career and supported my family. So I owe that to working hard and also through my education. So I have always been a staunch believer and supporter of education.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks. And Russ, this question's for you. And it goes to one of the things that you mentioned in the candidate profile about how you decided to run for office. My question is, why should people vote for someone who worked for a failing school district for decades and then who woke up one day feeling a calling to run for the school board?
Well, that's interesting that we call it a failing school district, because how many Fresno Unified graduates have gone on to do great and wonderful things, including Mr. Renteria, myself. You know, yes, we were well supported. And yes, there are failures. Unfortunately, on this planet, it doesn't seem that we can win them all. But we will win every one we can. And I will make a difference for every one that I can. Because I learned working with the wolf and the most least advantaged, should I say, the most disadvantaged students in the district. It was that one-on-one working with them and showing belief and support in them and giving them a mentor that they came back to tell you how they were doing the next year. They didn't have to. Why did they? Why did my student come back 2 years later to say, Mr. Allen, I wanted to tell you this in front of Mr. Duran, your principal, but I just completed my associate's degree. I'm signing up at Fresno State to become a math teacher just like you were. What? When you realize you've made that difference and that students are currently under attack because of these mandates, and they're going to need some quick catching up. When the average student is 2 to 3 years behind right now, they are going to need some serious resources in the remediation and the catch-up department. And I don't see anything around that other than that. And, you know, I do agree with my opponents in some of their statements. There are some undeniable truths about the Fresno High area. And yes, there are gang issues, but that's because there are people that didn't have better opportunities, and always looking to provide those better opportunities, to provide better choices for individuals who would normally be shoved in a corner. I know about that back table in many teachers' classrooms. I had to go in as the math push-in teacher at Scandinavian to help the ones that the teacher wasn't getting to. So I know what goes on in our district, really I do. I've been there, and I wasn't with blinders on.
Thank you, Russ. And then for those who've just joined us, this is GV Wire's candidate forum for the Fresno High Area 5 trustee seat, the special election. Ballots are going out on March 14th, and the deadline to vote is April 12th. So back to our general questions. Student performance is something each one of you has already touched on tonight during the forum in one respect or another. Mayor Dyer spoke last year, and he said the city can't thrive without having a prepared workforce. And by prepared, he means ready for either career or for college. We hear so many stories about employers who's they hire people and then find out that their new workers, they just can't read well enough or do math well enough to be able to do the jobs that they've been hired for. What do you think it will take to turn around the district? And what will you do if you are elected? And Daniel, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you. I will say the best investment in any city is investment in education. Fresno High has a very high education graduation rate, 92%. But if you look at the website, look at the studies, you see that the students are not proficient in math or not proficient in reading. So we need to really bring up those scores to get them college ready, get them educated to graduate and pursue higher education. And for those students that are not interested in college, I think we have to create a pathway for vocational training, such as the trades and the apprenticeship programs. So I fully believe that we need to really put our best foot forward, and starting at the lower level. I think what the problem right now is a lot of high school kids get to that level and have difficulty with the 3 R's. So I think we really need to invest and really focus in on the early learners, and get back to the basics of the reading, writing, and the math, and prepare them for the real world. As I said, my first statement was the best investment in any community is through education. And I agree with the mayor. Thank you.
And Russ, the same question for you. What do you think it will take to turn around the district, and what would you do if you were elected?
Well, a little more assertion of intestinal fortitude. I think there's a concept that has been avoided, and it's called end of year exams. And the whole concept of grade levels, moving on to the next grade because you're too old. What if you haven't learned what you need to? You just timed out. And so they shove you along and you're going to remain forever behind. We need a sidestep program for students who fall behind. And with as many students as that encompasses at this point in time, it's going to be imperative that we get remediation, a sidestep program, and we actually test kids and don't advance them if they do not have the skills to go beyond that level. I would much rather have a kid with a 4th grade reading level at the end of 12th grade than a kindergarten to 1st grade level because they were just passed on and never remediated. And at DeWolf, quite often we'd get kids with kindergarten and 1st grade reading levels, math levels, and we'd get them up to 6th graders, dagnabbit. But did that show anything for our school? No, but did it make a difference for that child? Absolutely.
Thanks, Russ. Andrew, same question for you.
Well, I think we're going to have to concentrate really on the primary grades, the K through 8, because once you get into high school, the district constantly says, we got these brand new programs, that are wonderful. You'll see them in reading their newspaper, Building Futures, but I never see, well, isn't that wonderful? See? Oh, telemarketer. But I never see any programs listed in their Building Futures magazine, Nancy Coppout, that says, these are the great programs we're going to use and implement that are going to bring a student's academic status upward. You never see that. We always see, we've got the doctor's program, international baccalaureate and so forth, but never any programs that are going to help a student increase their learning ability, increase their reading ability, their mathematics ability. You don't see anything in that. The reason that Slater began to go up academically was that the state academic intervention team told the parents, your child is not going to be promoted to the next grade if they are not at grade level. That was simple. So that if they didn't get to be at grade level at the end of the school year, they were going to stay back. That gave that student great wanting to do the work, other than saying, well, I'm going to be a nuisance in class because I know I'm going to get transferred or passed forward from 4th to 5th. But now, that's the thing we have to do. We have to let students know that you're not going to get passed forward. You're not going to get promoted until you actually do your work and until you are at grade level. And I think we need to let the parents know that and make sure our students know that, and to assist our teachers as much as we can in terms of helping them to engage our students better in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So that next question, we've already sort of covered a little bit of this ground so far in the forum, and that is the conduct of some of the school board members has come under some scrutiny recently. Trustee Terry Sladek has been under a censure almost the entire time he's been serving on the school board. And a tweet recently from Trustee Viva Islas caused some upset, concern, a lot of pain, and a lot of anger from people who came out then to the school board, and it ended up being very disrupted for the second time in about 6 months, where they had to adjourn a school board meeting early because there was so much happening that was not school board business. I'm going to just ask you to answer this very briefly because you sort of touched on this, but what would your approach be if you were elected? Would you be a flamethrower, a team player, or somewhere in between? And Russ, let's start with you.
Well, first and foremost, the lack of professionalism has been appalling. Their failure to adhere to the respectful Roberts rules that should be getting used. I don't think there's anyone right when everybody's wrong. And we just need to insist on getting back to the rules of civility and show each other the respect and patiently wait for a turn. I'm sorry, my pink one announces that I have a guest at the door. Sorry.
Let's make all penguins and all phones go on silent if we can. All right, thanks, Russ. Andrew, same question to you. Would you be a flamethrower, a team player, or somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between, I guess, in the fact that I would respect both the people of the school board trustees, the administrators, but most importantly, the people that come from the public who come to address the board. Our present president, Jonathan Rosas, has no idea what she's doing. I've been to board meetings, like I said, over 260 of them since 2004. I've never seen this kind of lunacy at a board meeting. And I've seen everywhere from parents getting upset and teachers during the recession in 2005 and so forth, to the FTA president getting thrown out of the building. But nowhere did you have to the next day bring additional armed police to a meeting, and then to have them lined up in the boardroom intimidating people, and then to have the board president say, "Wow, there's 24 people, so instead of having 3 minutes, we're only going to let you speak for 2 minutes," even though there's 2 hours before it's 10 o'clock, which the board meeting can go until 10. So board members that don't really want to be at a board meeting, board trustees that don't want to be there, they want to get home. It's disrespectful to the district and gives a bad image. And I think that has to change.
Thank you, Andrew. And Daniel, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned earlier that I've been working in the community on various boards for over 40 years. I'm not a stranger to working with governing boards and bringing people together and finding a common ground. I always believe that we can work in the middle and find what we can all agree on and then move from there. Look at the easy solutions. And the distractions are distracting from what the board is meant to do, and that is to work on student achievement. That is taking the time away from the real work that we need to do. I think we just have to come together as mature adults and have an agreement and follow some rules and regulations and get the job done. To answer the question, I'm someone in the middle who want to be a peacemaker. And I think, I have the experience to do that. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Russ.
If I could finish my response, yes, I do believe that what he just said, and I tend to be the peacemaker in many situations in my life. I'm that mediary that can talk to both ends. I am a tweener politically. I'm not a far right, I'm not a far left. I'm a middle of the road kind of guy. And I have in many instances had to use those skills to be the intermediary in some kind of hostile situations. And Andrew, I did want to say, I don't take offense that you didn't see me there, but do you see the shirt I'm wearing? Educate, not eradicate. And I'm turning around not to disrespect so that you can see
I love
that
it,
I am
man.
wearing the shirt that I wore to the board meeting that they held at Fresno High and a couple others that they had. So I haven't been completely a missing person as was accused, but I don't want to attack you on it
because
because
said you were, my friend. I never said you were. I'm just saying that I've been to 267 of them.
Okay,
that's your pleasure.
okay, hold on, time out, Andrew. It's Russ's turn, so let's let him speak, please. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to let him know that I've been a little more, I tend to be reserved and kind of try and stay back until I can make sense out of it. I don't want to speak up prematurely and then find out I was misinformed and need to pull my foot back out of my mouth. And so if I'm staying quiet, I haven't formed an opinion yet, usually is where I'm at on that.
All right, thank you, Russ. My next question actually kind of segues from the t-shirt that you just showed. And I think from the comments that I've already heard tonight at the forum, the answer will be pretty obvious already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And really, I just need a yes or no answer from you. But the issue of the Fresno High mascot, the school mascot, Carol Mills voted with the majority of trustees to change that mascot from the image of an American Indian. And they ended up selecting, or the students, I guess, voted for the line drawing of Royce Hall and also the letter F. So if you had been on the school board then, how would you have voted and why? I think I already know why, but let's keep our answers short. I'm going to start, Andrew, starting with you.
I would have voted to table it until after the pandemic, when we had in-person board meetings, to allow the public their opportunity to voice their opinion.
Thanks, Andrew. And Daniel?
Thank you. I'm a proud family of 3 generations of Fresno High Warriors. But I will tell you that one of my platforms is to provide a voice for students. So I support the students and their decision to change the mascot, and they actually developed another new mascot. So I support them and the process, the democratic process in changing the mascot. Thank you.
And Russ, how would you have voted if you'd been on the school board, and explain why you would have voted the way you are going to explain?
If I was forced to vote, I would have voted no, but I would have requested that it be tabled for more information and more community input. And I don't feel that the democratic process offered the students really was, because keeping the old one was not one of the choices. And so therefore, you can't really say, well, if I get to choose between this and this instead of retaining. And we keep calling it a mascot instead of an emblem. And there is an issue there. You see, as an emblem, it represents artistically, as it did on the front mosaic. If you have a mascot that is in full Indian ceremonial garb and they're doing cartwheels and it's touching the ground, that is so disrespectful. There is a huge difference between a mascot and an emblem that represents. And so I think we need to kind of separate those issues a little bit and say, yes, I agree. We're not going to have someone dancing around in ceremonial Native American garb. But we're also, not going to destroy 120 years of history without getting community input. And the Naga, Native American, they've just had a big battle over their Senate Bill 116 in Colorado, where they're forcing every public school to get rid of everything. And now they're saying, why are you erasing our history? We don't like the ones that had racist or were misrepresenting, but those that did represent respectfully, we kind of like those. So it's not an over topic with the Native Americans or us gringos.
All right, I see both Andrew and Daniel would like to comment on that. I'm going to start. Andrew, I saw your hand first, and then Daniel, I'll call on you next.
I'd like to go one further, and that is like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis did when she was, or Jacqueline Kennedy when she was in the White House. She developed a pamphlet for the White House that showed and explained the different artifacts that are in there. I would like to see the same thing done for each school. A pamphlet explaining the name of the school, who that person is, and how we came about determining what their mascot was going to be. That'll go a long way in terms of explaining and helping our children understand who their school is named after, why, and what is representing them. And so we don't have this kind of thing where we're going to try and change history, in the future.
Thank you, Andrew. And Daniel?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Fresno High was enacted in 1889. So in those years, I suspect that the Native American was an appropriate mascot, but not today. I will tell you, I went through the school clubs at Fresno High, and I was looking for, and I honor and respect the Native Americans, and I went looking for the school clubs at Fresno High School. There is no Native American club. There's a Latin American, but there's no Native American. So I think they're sorely missing the respect and the honor of the Native Americans. So I'd like to see that maybe in the future.
All right, great. Thanks, Daniel. So we talked a lot tonight about areas where Fresno Unified needs to improve. But on the flip side, what do you think FUSD is doing right? And Daniel, let's start with you.
Could you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
Sure. We've talked a lot tonight about areas where Fresno Unified needs to improve. But on the flip side, what would you say Fresno Unified is doing right?
I just muted myself. Well, we are receiving $700 million from the feds and the state government over the next 2 or 3 years to be spent. So we really need to spend that money in early development, early learners. I'd like to see money go toward, naturally, the special education program. We have students that are homeless that need our attention and help. Also students who live in foster care. I would like to look at how we can look at all the school systems and how we can improve the structures. I know there are a few repairs that need to be made. We need to focus on that, repair those. We also need to refocus back on teachers and the tools that they need. Maybe we need to hire more teachers, smaller classrooms, student teachers' aides, so to speak, and work on organizations that bring parents back into the classroom. I understand, and I will tell you, my wife is a school teacher, and she'll tell me that a teacher's job is always easier when there's more parent involvement. We need to work on programs to reach out to these parents. I'd like to see more money spent on school psychologists. I know I mentioned my grandson was a student at Fresno High School, so I have seen some issues with regard to maybe a little bit of depression and isolation. I'd like to see more school psychologists work on that. I also like to see positions created, such as school social workers, to reach out to families, to reach out to students. And we've got to determine what are the causes for maybe missing school. Today, I understand the absenteeism rate is the highest it's ever been. So there's a lot of issues that we need to reach out. We need to spend money to correct those problems.
Daniel, I'm going to repeat the question because I'm not sure that you heard, but what I was asking was, and you've just mentioned areas where Fresno Unified still needs to improve.
Yeah.
What I was asking you was, what are the areas that you think they're doing, getting it right? In other words, that they don't need improvement. What can you point to that you think, oh yeah, this they've got that? I think you're on mute again.
The teacher rate at Fresno High School is 22 students per one teacher. I think they've got that right. I think they continue the sports programs, the music programs, and the art programs. Those are the right things to do. It is difficult right now. They're doing I know they are working to make improvements. The pandemic absolutely put everything on hold. And we talked about all this evening. So we need to maneuver our way and help navigate through the pandemic and then get back on track. And so it's not easy. It must be easy for me from the outside to look at all the faults and the problems from the outside, but I want to work from the inside to make those changes. And the only way to do that is to get elected. Thank you.
Russ, same question for you. What do you think Fresno Unified is doing right?
they show up every day for these kids. The heart on some of my colleagues, co-teachers, was incredible. Their door was open before school, gave kids a warm place, and gave adult who cared and would talk to them about what they needed for the day. That just opening your door and being able to communicate with kids. There are so many teachers doing that, and they go unnoticed, but they sure did make a difference. It's like the kid on the beach throwing the starfish back, and the old man said, "You can't make a difference." Well, I made a difference to that one. Every one that we've made a difference to is a success for Fresno Unified. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them that have done really well. And, it's kind of like throwing rocks in the fog. Unless you heard something crash or bang, you don't know if you hit anything. And so when you teach kids, if they come back, that old 1 in 10 rule comes back to say thank you. For every one that came back to say thank you, figure there were at least 10 that felt that way. And, teachers, some teachers more than others, get 10 kids a year from the previous year coming back to tell them. So what does that mean that teacher reached? Now, I couldn't reach every kid, but the ones I didn't, Miss Wegerman could, in the math department at SCAN. The kids that didn't understand her understood me. Kids didn't understand me, understood her, but they had a caring adult that was there to meet them. And there are so many good and wonderful adults in Fresno Unified that their daily services to these kids go unnoticed, but not by those kids.
Thanks, Ross. And Andrew, same question for you. What's Fresno Unified doing right?
I don't know. That's a kind of a listening to this gentleman. It's kind of convoluted there. They're building facilities using the school bond funds. We got great gymnasiums now. We got great swimming pools. We got great classrooms. Really, the only thing I can point to is the facilities aspect of it, because it's tough to get rid of that. We got great programs. We got great programs at our schools, at our high schools especially. I visited university, or not, not University High School, but Design Science over on Fresno City campus, and that was an amazing campus. That was an amazing school there in those classrooms. I was looking at the kid, and he asked me a question. Can you solve this problem? It was a calculus problem. I was like, hang on a second, let me look. And I looked at it, like, calculus. I love calculus. Here we go. He's, oh, wow, thank you. Be so great that all of our students excel. But we do have great programs. I'll give us that. The only thing. Well, we have great teachers. I'll give them that. There are, like I'm sure Russ has pointed out too, and I've seen those. We have the few bad eggs, and I would like to see FTA take a step in there and say, you know what, we are going to help maintain, good teachers, not just leave it to the FUSD. Right. Although we give great training, and so, but other than that, we got great parents, and I think we have wonderful kids. So that's how we've done great there.
Thanks, Andrew. My next question is, what aspect of education will you be most passionate about if you're elected to the school board? And let's start with Russ.
As Ben pointed out, the need for vocational education is huge. For so long, we have made every child feel like they have to go to college. If they don't go to college, there's something wrong with them. But quite frankly, I wasn't ready to go to college after my senior year in high school. I needed to have my butt kicked in the School of Hard Knocks. I got my doctorate in the School of Hard Knocks before I went back to college. I was a blue-collar laborer, unemployed numerous times. And after that experience, I knew why I was at college. I knew why I wanted that degree. I knew why I wanted my straight A average. but I wasn't ready right out of high school. Vocational ed would have been great for me. And for many kids, it is that stepping stone that they can decide they want college later. They've got a career. They're ready to work, become tax-paying citizens. And yes, they do need to read well enough in that to be able to fill out a ballot, a job application, and all those other things. So, we're not abandoning the reading, writing, arithmetic, 3 R's, as was said. We're ingraining that into things that students want to learn because they see a value. If they can see that this produces an income, they're more likely to do it than just because some old teacher with foul breath told them to do so.
Thanks, Russ. Same question for you, Andrew. What aspect of education will you be most passionate about if you're elected to the school board?
Oh, I think, as Russ said, CTE is going to be the greatest area for our population due to its economic dynamics. I visited Duncan Polytechnic and was looking at those brand new career technical education buildings there, and I was engaging with kids who are doing welding classes and stuff, and they're showing me their projects. They're like, "Oh, check this out!" And and the teacher's telling me, "Oh, well, we didn't have these items, but these kids built it. They went online. They got the specifications. They're cutting it up and making it and adding and subtracting fractions and so forth, where they didn't do it before." And the kids are telling me, before I didn't care about going to school. Now I've got something that is engaging me, and now I got something that has said, you know what? I want to go to class now, because when I go to class and I do these classes, I get to go to my CTE class and have really great time there and learn. And so I think CTE is going to be the carrot for most of our students when they get to high school. But we have to reach them at least in the 6th grade area, so we can say, look, this is what you have to look forward to if you want to be a part of it. So you're going to have to start studying and buckling down. This way, when they get to high school, they won't be so far behind.
Thanks, Andrew. And Daniel, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. My answer is simple. I never want to lose focus on reading, writing, and math. We really have to focus on those three and prepare our students for high school and then beyond. In the real world, where I worked, we had problems with people being able to read and write a decent paragraph. When I go to the market and I want change from a cashier who's didn't finish high school, it's tough for them to make a change. So we have to really stay focused, I think, on the basics and never lose sight of that, the reading, writing, and math, as we move them along through the grade system, through grammar school and through middle school and through high school. I think we need to stay on focus. Maybe we need to test, reevaluate that, give them remedial training and maybe possibly tutoring. And that's what I think. We just and I agree with the others when it comes to vocational training. I also support those students that are not ready for higher education but want to go into the trades and constructions. I support that idea as well. But even those students need to be focused on the reading and the writing and the math. So that's my basic answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. So there are a lot of concerns have been raised really for years about Fresno Unified's special education programs and whether or not they're adequately meeting the needs of students. How would you rate Fresno Unified special ed program, and would you commit to increasing the funding? And let's start, Andrew, we'll start with you.
I don't think the problem with Fresno Unified is so much increasing the funding as it is actually getting the services out to those students who need it in special education. I've had parents come to me numerous times and say, my child's in school here, and I go to my principal, he's supposed to have this, he's autistic and so forth, or he has a speech, has a speech problem, and he's supposed to have a speech therapist, but he's not getting those services. And so I'm going to board meetings and I'm asking those questions, why? Why isn't the principal doing this? Why isn't my special ed administrator doing this? And the worst part about it is the special ed administrator or assistant superintendent for special ed isn't really a special ed professional. So he has no idea what to do when it comes to special education. And so children fall through the cracks. It's as simple as that. when Michael Hansen was there, I spoke to him, and I know many of the people who he hired to be in administration, and the reasons he gave me were not because they were actually professionals and were trained to be in those positions, but rather they were just going to do what he wanted them to do, and that was going to be the end of it. And because those jobs were so lavish, they were not going to say no to him. So that has hurt Fresno Unified, especially in special education. And then during the time when Michael Hansen was there, they cut back on special education funding, and Bob Nelson has done nothing to reinstitute those funds. And now they've got ESSER, but still they're not going towards special ed. So there's a problem there too.
So just as a point of information, though, the district did hire Tangi Pinero away from the Fresno County Office of Education, the Superintendent of Schools office, to step in to oversee special education at Fresno Unified. And I believe she's seen as fairly experienced and
You bet.
and a very good hire, so that it might be a sign of some improvement in the future.
Because Brian Beck was not.
Okay, so same question though for Daniel. How would you rate Fresno Unified Special Ed Program? And I think you have kind of a personal interest in this, you've told me.
And I do. And my grandson had numerous issues going through a variety of schools. And it's sad to say that almost on a daily basis, I would have to pick him up from school, take time out of my day to pick him up from school because of some behaviors. Schools were not prepared to deal with him. I think the problem was they were not fully staffed to evaluate him, to determine what his behavior was. And I know they just hired recently some new psychologists, and that's so important right now. That it starts with evaluating students and getting the proper treatment and care. So at this point, I will say I'm very proud of my grandson at Fresno High School. He's in an excellent program. So I have to say that before I was totally dismayed at the system, but I think I have confidence now that the school system is now identifying and recognizing the needs for special education. But clearly there's a need to really pursue that further. So thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And Russ, how would you rate Fresno Unified Special Education Program, and would you increase funding to it?
Well, obviously, due to inflation, funding will have to be increased to just provide the same service we have been providing. Mathematically, that's just a fact. We will have to increase funding accordingly. But do we want to just throw money at problems without an accountancy and making sure that the money is being used effectively for the right purposes? Yes, there are very many challenges in the special ed, especially in the emotional needs group. There are just so many problems. One of my friends used to substitute at a school called Phoenix, and it was a good day when he didn't have a chair or a desk thrown at him. And so, it's easy to bag on the teachers, but in some of these areas, they are given such challenges. I mean, how many of you could handle one of these kids looking up and spitting right in your face and not be tempted to take their head off? Because it happens. And my friend who it happened to, I have to say, earned my respect. He trembled for a minute and then he quietly wiped it off. And he became best friends with the kid that spat on him. And the kid was begging him to just hit him and fight. And had he done it, the kid would have won. But the amount of control by some of these teachers and the amount of love that they can show these kids, it's amazing. Adicott Center, go there, see what they do.
Isn't that though the role of special education teachers, to recognize the challenges that specific students may have, to whether it's a behavioral issue or developmental issue, and then be able to educate them accordingly, and perhaps be expecting an outburst, for example, or something like that. It's unfortunate that it goes with the territory, but that they would be presumably prepared for it ahead of time.
I also believe that California still requires a district be given till a kid is 25 if they are in such special need areas. They
That's
get to
correct.
stay in
Yes.
school till they are 25.
Yes.
That's a lot of responsibility for the district. It really is.
Well, let's move on to the next question, and that is about we've talked a little bit about this to this point, but it seems clear that Fresno Unified fell short during the pandemic. So many kids are so far behind right now, so much further behind than they were previously when they were already far behind. What does that say though about district leadership, that they have this huge gap that might be bigger than other districts are facing? And let's start, Daniel, if you could start it off.
Okay, thank you. Well, the district provided about a 33-page protocol of regulations of what to do during the pandemic. And it was just too complex, too convoluted. I'm not even sure whether the staff was able to read that. What I had heard from the teachers is that there was some inconsistency, no transparency. On a day-to-day basis, the policies would change and the protocols would change. So I think what we needed to do is, at a district, we needed to be consistent with how we dealt with the pandemic. And I think we fell down in many areas. I think we have discovered where our faults were and getting back on track and providing in-class instruction, which is what we already want naturally. So, but it did take a while to get here. So I will say that I was somewhat disappointed with the initial call out on the pandemic and how we handled that.
Thank you, Daniel. And Russ, I know you actually told me you had personal experience with being a teacher during the pandemic when everything went virtual and you decided that you didn't want to continue teaching because of that. What would you say that how the district fell short, and what does that say about district leadership?
I would say that school districts nationwide were just blindsided. And they were ramrodded with mandates told by people like Governor Newsom of things that had to be done. Their hands were tied. They were just given horrific information that wasn't necessarily true. So in retrospect, we can blame all day long, but that's kind of pointless. How do we pick up the pieces and move on is the real deal. And it's going to be all about getting back to business. One of the big problems that I felt in the classroom was it was just too easy for my students to fake it and act like they're in class on this program called Teams. Everybody would check in and we'd have to be there, and the computer would say they're there. They allowed them to not have their cameras on to prove that they're there because, well, some kids are not, something might be going in the house that's not appropriate to let you see. So rather than having, dad walk by the camera naked, they said, oh, well, just let them leave their cameras off. And it just became this, what they thought they could get away with because you weren't there and they're home. And there were all kinds. I had one kid rolling a joint on his camera for his classmates to see. And then I had to get into reporting that. And I don't think they could have done that in my classroom. But for them to be doing that on their computer screens and incriminating themselves, they don't realize they're doing. And, it just became a fiasco, in my opinion, to watch that. The human interaction of them actually physically coming into the classroom and telling you hello or good morning, it was all missing. And it was all contrived and too easy to fake it. And I know there were many teachers that were probably just loving it because They didn't have to get up and go to school. They didn't have to pack a lunch. They didn't, they just got to sit in front of their computer and, okay, well, this is independent practice time, and they're off in their kitchen making their breakfast. They can't say they were, because there were too many instances when my principal tried to get a hold of them and they weren't available. And, so I know it happens, but I also know people have needs. But when you get people too comfortable, and it's just not a good situation. And I didn't like, feeling like I wanted my face on this experience with my students. No. We need a more personal, one-on-one type to interact in a classroom with the materials, and without the distractions, because kids would be on their screen and you could tell they were playing a game. Their eyes are going like this and they're smiling way too much for the subject you're on. You could tell they were playing a game on the same screen that they were supposedly engaged in your class.
So what should they have done to make sure that the kids, should they have said, okay, you have to have your camera on, and if we see you playing a game that, we're calling your parents? I mean, what's the solution to that?
True parent interaction, parental support is key. The parents who would come in and take a look to see what was on their kid's screen, you called the parent and they'd go look, yeah, he's playing a game. Parents were usually honest with you, and they'd go, and now you started a little war, and sometimes it got ugly, and you got a kid kicked out of their house. Oh no, that wasn't the intention. But unfortunately, that's the kind of things that happens to some of our kids. The number of our kids that became homeless because the last family member that was giving them a place to stay, and their thing wasn't they were homeless, or where do you live? Oh, I'm staying with. And that is such an uncomfortable and hard place for a kid to find themselves in their last year or two of high school. And it is a lot more common than people realize.
All right. Thanks, Russ. Andrew, go back to the question, which was that if Fresno Unified fell short during the pandemic, what does that say about the district leadership? What's your comment?
Oh, it's that the district leadership really dropped the ball. In 2018, I had gone to the school board and asked them to purchase tablets for the high school kids. They made that purchase, and the district made the purchases, but the tablets were never distributed to the students at the high school level. I went back in 2019 and said we need kids to have tablets at the elementary and middle school level. The district appropriated those funds, the board did, but the district administration did not, or they purchased them again, but they did not distribute them to the students. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, you're going to go home, you're going to take your tablet with you, right? But they couldn't do that because why? All of the tablets were in the warehouse. So it took a long time to get all that unsettled, unwound. And then I agree completely with Russ. Many teachers that I know who retired, they retired 26 years, 28 years. They said, to heck with this. I'm not going to go. I don't need 30 years that badly, and they just threw their hands up and left. Many teachers told me, like Russ said, they, instead of putting their pictures on those screens, the teacher said, well, I'm going to put the emoji on. Let them put their emoji on there. That way, I don't have to see what's going on at their house. What if a parent is hitting them, or if they're playing a game and the school calls it the parent, and the parent says, doggone it, I had to leave work because of you, smack. Teachers are required by law to report that. What better way not to be required to report it by putting up an emoji and not having to see it? These are things that went on across the district, and they just simply dropped the ball, and they just don't want to take responsibility for it. They keep saying, well, the problem for poor grading has happened because of the pandemic, when in fact this problem was occurring years prior. They keep saying we have 86% or 89% graduation rate. I had a kid when I was working as an electric worker in September come to me and say, I want to register to vote, but he couldn't fill out the voter registration form. His mom went home, brought his diploma from Sunnyside High School. She showed it to me to tell me he is 18. And I'm like, I'm not saying you're not 18, but you graduated from Sunnyside High School and you're functionally illiterate? That's insane. But the district says we have an 86% graduation rate and we're proud of it. And every time I go to the boardroom every year, I ask them, what is the quality of your graduates? And when this pandemic is done, it's like they're going to be, I bet you at the end of this year, they're going to say, oh, we got a great graduation rate. But because of the loss of education during the pandemic, I don't see how they're going to justify that.
Yeah, and I think what you're bringing up is that the issue of student performance has been an issue in the district even before the pandemic. That student who graduated from Sunnyside was being educated for probably at least 9 years before the pandemic hit.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next question, which is that the Fresno Teachers Association has a large say in what happens in the district. How will you partner with FTA to make things better for students and for teachers? And Russ, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Well, I've been an FTA member for 27 years. I was an FTA rep for 6 years with Larry Moore as the president way back when.
Right on.
And he's probably the best president they ever had here with the district. He actually showed the intestinal fortitude that the position required. I was really impressed with Larry, and I worked with FTA, and I agree with a lot of what they do. Nobody is 100% right all the time. And so they have a lot of the right interests in mind, but sometimes they maybe allow people to skirt things that shouldn't have been skirted. And so I think, the best way to deal with anyone is honest dialogue. Face the facts, the truth, as hard as they may be, and then come together with the best solution that we can all agree on and put our greatest efforts into making happen.
Thanks, Russ. And Andrew, how would you partner with FTA to make things better for students and teachers?
I would like to work with FTA to see if we can come together and design programs at the elementary and high school levels that are going to be cooperative, that both the administration and the teaching profession can get along with. I also want to see FTA take more responsibility for the training of their teachers. They seem to rely completely and 100% totally on Fresno Unified providing training, when in fact, I believe first FTA should take responsibility for their teachers. If there are teachers that are delinquent or deficient in their teaching skills, I believe that FDA has a responsibility to hold them accountable and to help mentor their teachers. And I think that FDA should be able to pay for a PAR program that Fresno Unified used to have, and maybe hire back some of the retired teachers that have been known to be exquisite as teachers and engaging, and have them go around the district and actually teach teachers how to teach better. That would be something I would like to work with FTA.
So teacher mentors is what it sounds like you're talking about.
Yes, teacher mentoring and responsibility.
Thanks, Andrew. Daniel, same question for you. How would you partner with FTA to make things better for students and teachers?
Thank you. Thank you. I was listening to Andrew, and Andrew, you had very good answers. By the way, I agree with those. When we look at poor test scores and so forth, we always blame the teachers. And I will tell you that's not really the case. It's much more difficult than that. Teachers are the boots on the ground, and I think we need to give them the time they need and the tools they need to do their job, whether they're smaller classrooms, whether they're additional substitutes, for example, or maybe teachers' aides in the classroom. So we need to give them the time they need. And they're overworked, by the way. I take a look at a high school instructor. who's got 20, 30 kids in a class, and he teaches 5 classrooms. That's well over 100 students. That is an enormous job. So I would like to partner with the FTA to work on some formulas and work on, and I hate to repeat the same things that Andrew repeated, but I agree with him on that. Have partnerships and join with them and work together to come to a really positive resolution on teachers. That was one of my big platforms, is working with students, parents, and teachers. I think we should bring the teachers to the table and let them become part of the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. So over the years, Fresno Unified Voters have been very supportive of the district when the district asks for approval of a bond issue. And so far, there's been multiple bond issues over the years, and I think over $1 billion worth of bonding has been raised to improve school facilities. But we still have some school spaces that aren't air conditioned and some that are just falling apart. Should Fresno Unified be planning for another bond issue, another bond measure? And let's start with Andrew.
I wouldn't support it, simply because being a part of Measure Q, Measure X, and Measure M, the school district has always gone, well, let me start with this. When the school district first started their audit of the district for the master plan, it was said that it was going to take $1 billion to remove all the temporary trailers and bungalows and upgrade our permanent facilities. In November, Karen Temple stated that it's by the end of Measure M, we would have spent $1.8 billion on facilities. And yet you go to your local elementary schools and you see what looks like a trailer park. Holman Elementary, you go to to Wilson, you go to Roding and so forth. Trailers are just all over the place, and so I keep parents ask me, well, they said on the ballot my school was listed there, and I said, well, that's a thing that the district does, that they kind of say everybody's going to get some piece of the pie, but they don't. And the worst part about it is when they pass the ballot, after getting the money, they have a workshop, and then the board does completely the opposite of what they promised the parents and the voters they were going to do with those funds. And I find that very, very disheartening. And so what I would like to do is, should a bond measure come up, I would like to see what the projects are going to be that bond measure is going to pay for. This way the board cannot pull a switch on the voters. That's what I would like to see.
And when you talked about trailers on campus, you're talking about portable classrooms, right?
Portable classrooms, yes, indeed.
And then the amount of money you just attributed to a quote to Karen Temple, that money isn't all the money that's coming just from Fresno Unified Voters from the bond measure here, from the property taxes that Fresno Unified property owners are paying.
Some are matching funds, but not as much as the district had said. If the district had kept its promise or had told us honestly, they said that we were going to get matching funds for every dollar that we got. So that means that we would have humongous, we'd have over $2 billion in terms of school bond funds, but that never came to be. So now we're going to have to go back to the public again and say, you know what? Yeah, we do get some matching funds. I think this last one, Measure Q, we got 50 million. I think in Measure X, it was only 100 million, but it's not as much as they say it's going to be. So, but it's always that carrot that they put in front of you that deceives the people. So I want to see the projects first laid out so that the parents know when they vote on it.
Thanks, Andrew. And obviously the money we're talking about that comes from the state, that there's a lot of other school districts that are also in contention to get a portion of it. And in some cases, some of those facilities dollars, they can't be spent any old way. They have to be spent for specific projects that are specific to whatever the state funding source is. So air conditioning, for example, we might need a lot of that here, but that might not be something that the state is willing to finance. And so, Daniel, same question to you. With all the money that's been spent, but there's still a lot of needs in the district, should the district be preparing for another bond measure?
Well, I wish to support financing the school system. What I do believe in, though, is oversight, and I do believe in prioritizing what the needs are. We have some schools and some districts that need a lot of repair and so forth. We need to really focus on the priorities and what we need to fix. And we also need to manage our money with oversight. A good example is that there was money to replace air filters last year, but the school district did not. The money was there. It was approved to do that, and they did not do that. That's a good example of not spending the money. That money was there. So who's to blame for that? We need to find some. We need to find a way to oversight our spending. And yes, but to answer your question, yes, I do believe in spending more money, but it has to be, accountable. I believe in accountable. I talked earlier about that. I was a good watchdog on taxpayer dollars. So I think we have to spend it wisely with oversight and prioritize our expenses and expenditures. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And same question for you, Russ.
I would definitely, as Andrew said, need more information on what the plans for such bond use would be before I could possibly get behind it. I know in the past we've had issues that were very suspicious of, were their administrators getting kickbacks for having hired specific companies? And as a teacher, when I would see this work come in and get done, I used to be a construction worker, and I was like, are you okay? This is union grade pay that they're getting, and why does it seem lower quality? That they don't seem to be getting the bang for their buck that they're supposed to be. And you just have to wonder who's getting the kickbacks that is allowing this to transpire. And yes, accountability. I agree with both my opponents that the need for great accountability in any new funding is huge and should be one of the most important things, that we are spending the taxpayer money where we tell the taxpayers we are spending it. And I think that kind of integrity needs to come back to Fresno Unified because it's been very questionable.
All right, thanks, Russ. So now we're at the portion of our forum where we're going to look for closing comments from our candidates. And I'm sure you're relieved because we've been sitting here for quite some time, but I really appreciate a very, very thorough discussion of a lot of issues for Fresno Unified. So Daniel, if you want to start, if you have a closing comment.
Okay, thank you. My father was a single parent raising 5 children. So I know the struggles of being a student under those circumstances. In 2007, my children's mother passed away, and I became a single parent. So I know the obstacles that parents are experiencing today. Fresno High has a very unique profile. 90% of the students at Fresno High School are minority. There's about 90% who are economically disadvantaged. Of the total population, 75% are Latinos. So I feel that is best suited to represent that population. And I do think representation matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And Russ, do you have any closing comments?
Well, one interesting thing that has transpired in my life that does give me a little bit of a front row seat here. My old principal of DeWolf, Rachel Maciel, called me up about a month or two ago and said they really miss the music program that I used to do there. And would I consider coming out of retirement to teach music classes? So for the last 3 Wednesdays, I've been going to DeWolf from 2 until 3:30 in the afternoon to teach guitar lessons to aspiring young musicians. And she says it has really sparked a movement on the campus of positivity. Kids that were kind of loners sitting are now active members in the guitar club and are excited to come to school. So once again, I'm seeing that give them a reason to be excited to be there, and they will do what they have to for that engagement. And to have another adult that cares and can actually call them by name. That's so important. And so many teachers fail to realize the importance of being able to call all of their students by name by the end of the second week of school. It was what I challenged myself with. And yes, when I had 42 in a class, 5 classes, 42, that was 210 students in my day. And they had until, I want to say, September 30th, something like that, to get the classes down to the class size of 36. Until then, I had more students than chairs. Deal with it, Alan. Hey, I've been there. I've seen these things. And so I am optimistic. I'm exceedingly optimistic about the possible change that can come. And so I look to try and be a force in bringing about positive change.
Thank you, Russ. And Andrew, your closing comments?
I've been to over 267 board meetings, fighting for the rights of parents, English learners, special needs students, and also overseeing the school bond funds are spent correctly. Malik Elementary is going to have the board ratify its contract, and the renovation was only 75% done. When I went to the board with photographs, they had to take it off the agenda. So there was a lack of oversight there. I've made schools, I've helped, like I said, make Slater a better school. I received an award called for your excellence and for turning it around. When I went to Malik, former Superintendent Hanson threw this gauntlet down and said, let's see you make a performing school better. And so I looked and I said, well, you know what? Let's see if we can build a science lab. I did, and without costing the district a penny, and brought science scores up. Again, fighting students to get teachers in their classroom when they were in middle school and high school. So I believe if you want someone who's going to stand up for you and fight for your rights as parents, I'm the guy for you. I've proven it in the past.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And this will conclude GV Wire's candidate forum for the special election of the April 12th election for the Fresno High area trustee seat. The ballots, once again, will start going out on March 14th. So that's a little bit less than 2 weeks from now. And the election will conclude on April 12th. Thanks to everybody for participating. Thanks for those who watched us live or will watch us on replay. And good night. And don't forget to vote.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.